to see. We have blinded them again with our man-made laws and creeds, eager, ready to condemn. Now we plead before your throne. Power sings a siren tune. We've been throwing heavy stones. Lead us back to life in you. A valley of dry bones, lead us back to life in you. We've become a talent show. Lead us back to life in you. We've been throwing heaven's stones. Lead us back to life in you. We've been throwing.
Okay, one behind.
Huh?
One behind.
Oh, sorry. Last one. All right. That it? All right. Ready to go? You know, you might just give me the headway. That was my command, and then you have to stay waiting. But just kind of. I may not be teachable, but I might be conducted.
Yeah, don't worry about it. Thank you, though. It's just Ellen, that was so beautiful. Thank you. No, thank you, thank you. Thanks for, and I'm looking forward to hearing it again. And Kathleen, are you all good? You good? Okay. Yeah. You just be you. You'll be just fine.
Thanks, Ben. Good morning and welcome to First Presbyterian Church. Whoever you are, wherever you're coming from, however you're showing up for worship today, no matter who you love, what your body looks like, or what your history with religion and faith might have been, the truest thing about you is that you are deeply loved by God. And in that spirit, would you stand if you wish and sing with us together? Waited for this day, we're gathered in your name, we're calling out to you. Your glory like a fire, awakening desire will burn our hearts with truth. And you're the reason we're here, yes, you're the reason we're singing. Open up the heavens, we want to see you. Open up the floodgates, a mighty river flowing from your heart and filling every part of our praise. Your presence in this place, your glory on our face, we're looking to the sky. Descending like a cloud, you're standing with us now, Lord, unveil our eyes. Yes, you're the reason we're here, and you're the reason we're singing. Open up the heavens, we want to see you. Open up the floodgates, a mighty river flowing from your heart and filling every part of our praise. Show us your glory. Show us your power. Show us your glory, Lord. Let's sing that together. Show us your glory. Show us your power. Show us your glory, Lord. We sing open up the heavens. We want to see you. Open up the floodgates, the mighty river flowing from your heart and filling every part of our praise. Yes, open up the heavens, we want to see you. Open up the floodgates, the mighty river flowing from your heart and filling every part of our praise. So every time it rains, I think of this worship song that we used to sing in my church as a little girl. It was a Spanish church, so it was called Haz llover, which is Let It Rain in English. And I think of this song, and I think of Open Up the Heavens in the following song that we listen to, and it's the same thing, you know. I try to imagine being fully basked in his presence, letting everything open up, our hearts, the heavens, and we just take in everything that God has to offer, and that's what I want us to listen to in these next words. Image of the invincible, in our pain we stretched out, not to part the seas, but to open up the veil. Blood poured out, not for war, but peace, and to show us God's own grace. Wounded healer, we give our hearts to you. Wounded healer, we give our hearts to you. No fire, no fury, just death into life. Over and over till all things are right. No fire, no fury, just death into life. Over and over till all things are right. Wounded healer, we give our hearts to you. Wounded healer, we give our hearts to you. Wounded healer, we give our hearts to you. Yeah. Wounded healer, we give our hearts to you. Will you pray with me? God of all heaven and all of the earth, allow the words and the stories that we hear today being shared with us open up our hearts to your glory. May the words that they say touch us, and may we touch the hearts of others. If you would, say hello to all of the folks around you, and we will continue worship in just a moment.
Good morning, good morning. I'm Caroline, I'm a pastor here, and I would welcome you to this service of worship on Martin Luther King Sunday. Sunday where we gather together to worship God and to recognize a great prophet among us. If you are visiting with us, there are some little visitor cards that are in your pews. Feel free to take one, fill out any information that you care to, and drop it in the little offering basket when you leave after the service. And a word of welcome to all of those who are joining with us online. I hope that you are warm and cozy wherever you might be on this frigid January morning. I'm getting lots of emails from people saying, we're joining from Florida, and I want to be like, I'm so happy for you. Pastoral visits are available to Florida if needed. So you probably, if you are a person who's attended here for a long time, you'll notice that the very familiar face is not preaching this morning. So Reverend Anderson Porter is a parish associate here, is a fixture as part of this community. He always, always, always preaches on MLK Sunday, and he is fine, but this week he was diagnosed with COVID. And so, following guidelines, he's not preaching today. He's feeling better. He's coming out of it. So we are going to switch his preaching date to the 30th of January. So come back to hear him in 2 weeks. Because we switched gears for today's sermon at somewhat of a last minute, I want to thank, we are looking forward to sharing with you a photography and essay project that was begun last year by one of our church members, Peter Guman, and which many of the people in this congregation contributed to. Among them are 3 speakers for this morning: Ellen Enslow, Greg Ondo, and Kathleen Skomarucha. You're going to hear a little bit more in the essay, in the program itself, about how Peter came up with the idea for this project, so I won't speak too much to it now. but I'm delighted to be able to bring you this this extraordinary essay collection and photography collection on this special day. A reminder that next week, the annual meeting of the Congregation and Corporation of First Presbyterian will take place in the sanctuary and online at 11:30 a.m. This will be a hybrid meeting. A Zoom link will be sent out on Wednesday in the e-news, and you will also be able to join on Sunday by going to the www.firstpres.live. So if you're joining us today online, there'll be that's exactly how you get to the annual meeting. If you received church emails, then today you will have received an email with a copy of this year's annual report. And that includes the financial information as well. There are copies that are mailed to anybody who doesn't have email access. And there are, if you're here in person and want a printed copy, there are a few available in the back. Because of the hybrid meeting format, I'm asking everybody who receives this report to consider coming up early with your list of comments and questions and emailing them either to Pete Galloway, whose email is in the letter introducing the annual report, or to myself over the coming week. We will read every question or comment submitted aloud. We'll share your name. But if we can do that into the mic from the front, that just allows everybody to hear a lot more easily. However, you can ask questions during the meeting. Both in person and on Zoom. This is also just a little reminder for anybody that doesn't receive church emails. This is a good time of year to sign up for them because anything weather related we'll send out on Facebook and on the church email site. The Pastoral Nominating Committee has finished an enormous part of their work, which is to develop church publicity materials and brochure that will be shared broadly as part of our head of staff search. There's a link to this really, really beautiful document on the website under the Pastoral Transition tab. We didn't print it because it's very photo heavy and it's a very glossy, beautiful book. But if you'd like a printed copy, just let me know. I'm sure the PNC is happy to share that. And finally, we have some wonderful news. You'll see one other missing face here this morning, and that is because one little face has been added. Yay! So little Juniper Rose Hankins made her debut last night. Mom and baby are doing well. It was a long labor. They're happy. They're healthy. And so Eric is off. He's being a parent full time for the next month. We are in very good hands with Kiana Rivera leading our services. So hold up Eric and April and little Juniper in prayer. And we cannot wait to meet her and have her as part of our church family. And with that, we will continue with the service, and the kids are welcome to leave with Miss Sarah for a special kids time, and I will share the scripture and invite those who are speaking to come forward if you'd like. The scripture reading for this morning is from the book of Isaiah. It is from chapter 58, verses 6 through 10. Listen and hear God's word for you. Isaiah writes, "Is this not the fast that I choose, to loose the bonds of injustice, to undo the thongs of the yoke, to let the oppressed go free, and to break every yoke? Is it not to share your bread with the hungry and bring the homeless poor into your house, when you see the naked to cover them, and not to hide yourself from your own kin? Then your light shall break forth like the dawn, and your healing shall spring up quickly. Your vindicator shall go before you. The glory of the Lord shall be your rear guard. Then you shall call, and the Lord will answer. You shall cry for help, and he will say, 'Here I am.' If you remove the yoke from among you, the pointing of the finger, the speaking of evil, if you offer your food to the hungry and satisfy the needs of the afflicted, then your light shall rise in the darkness, and your gloom be like the noonday." This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God.
The portrait is called Seeing White for Joy. Events over the summer of 2020, including the police shooting
all the way from intentional and overt racist acts to people making racist jokes. I didn't do any of those things. From white fragility, I learned racist behavior can be inadvertent and unknowing, and that I sometimes do or say racist things without knowing those actions are racist. White fragility is defined as an unconscious defense mechanism we, as white people, use to shut down conversations about race and to avoid addressing our part in racism. The Seeing White podcast helped me understand how structural racism came into being from the early founding of our country and to accept the concept that structural racism exists today. Structural racism was termed white supremacy, and that was a hard term to accept since white supremacy always had the equivalent meaning for me of the Ku Klux Klan. When I came to learn that white supremacy thinking, the belief that black people were inferior to whites, was used to build these structures and resulted in the system in which I, as a white person, have benefited. I began to understand that my success in life came not only from my hard work, but also from the advantages that I didn't ask for, but that benefit me nonetheless. One story I heard was a black dad having a talk with his son on how to behave. He stopped by the police, so he isn't shot. Being a dad, I couldn't even imagine having or needing this talk. It struck a chord in me deeply. I was also inspired and moved by several stories shared in my church discussion group about people's aha moments where we expand our understanding of racism and racial justice and our role in those. These stories gave me the idea to do this photo essay, to share these stories more broadly. It's not enough to be a non-racist white person. We must do what we can to dismantle systematic racism. I hope these stories help us all to expand our awareness of racism, deepen our commitment to racial justice, and take action.
Good morning. I'm Ellen Enslow, and I am humbled to have the opportunity to be able to speak on a Sunday of the Martin Luther King Jr. holiday weekend. I'm usually the one who's listening and inspired by others, particularly Reverend Anderson Porter. And in the spirit of Anderson Porter's humor, I will say, you will know that I am not Anderson Porter. I might sing in the choir, but I don't do solos. Kiana, you've got it. The remarks I have this morning are a slightly edited version of the essay that I was pleased to do on behalf of the Racial Justice Project that Peter started. I grew up around people who taught me to care about others, to recognize God as the creator of us all, and to see the world as bigger than my own backyard. Sunday school teachers reinforced what my family tried to demonstrate. Diversity, however, was not visually obvious. An exercise in a high school social studies class revealed ancestry from around the globe, but Darnell was the only student of color in my class of about 160. Busing wasn't about desegregation, but rather a practical matter of getting to school on roads meandering through Lancaster County cornfields. College was a family expectation, and I ended up on a campus that my mother described as a mini United Nations. Heated debate and righteous indignation characterized campus life. Protests, though, were outside of my comfort zone. But after 4 years, I was moved by my observations and what I learned from the commitment of students who courageously spoke out to help others. The activism applied to world events and local ones. Even this college, the first in the United States to be co-ed and to award degrees to black students, struggled with campus racism in the 1980s, and it still does. In my years there, apartheid in South Africa was an all-consuming topic, complete with a student-built shantytown. I am still amazed that Archbishop Desmond Tutu took the time to speak at our commencement. I consider it a privilege to have been among the 800 or so who shook his hand. All of this was outstanding grounding for my work as a history curator. but I'm afraid that racially diverse interpretation was often minimized in the face of being busy and finding my own feet. Somewhat self-centered motivation got in the way of the important. However, coworkers at the Chester County History Center, who were steeped in the local history of social reform, helped keep the whole truth, including inequity and injustice, front and center. Serving on the 2002 Underground Railroad exhibit team with community and academic advisors had a lasting impact about the work and worth of telling the whole truth. Before the term erasure became part of the dialogue of inclusion in historical interpretation, the colleague who curated the exhibit uprooted myths and generalizations in order to empower those who otherwise had been ignored or been viewed, often exclusively, as victims. Though not perfect, acceptance of all and acknowledging difficult history has been a practice at the History Center. The buildings themselves are a microcosm of the complexity of the human experience. Several African Americans have shared that the History Center, when housed in Horticultural Hall, welcomed them as youngsters in the 1950s, at a time when the YMCA next door, now also part of the center, did not. And yet, in about 2007, 2 African American women made an appointment to learn about how history organizations operate because they were planning to start the Chester County Black Historical Society. It felt like a stab to the heart. Could they not see themselves at the History Center? One woman talked about some content they were developing, to which I lamely commented, "That sounds interesting." She replied, "I researched the material in your library." Ouch. From that moment, I became determined to do my part to be more obviously inclusive. I had been given a voice in the work I was doing and was not using it enough. I have never regretted that effort, no matter how small or indirect the journey has seemed. Opportunities came out of the woodwork. For example, community members reminded us of local centennial birthdays, including that of Samuel Barber in 2010 and civil rights activist Byard Rustin in 2012. Each was featured with an exhibit and programming that highlighted their national and international influence. Thank you, Reverend Anderson Porter, for being a Rustin program presenter. Byard Rustin and Anderson Porter have given people a voice, often when others would not. As for Rustin and Barber, those 2 Westchester High School graduates, they have an almost parallel chronology, but unequal race-influenced experience here and beyond. And yet, they both refuse to hide their gifts despite real and potential ostracism for being gay, a civil rights issue embraced by Rustin in the 1980s. I continue to learn and hope that I always do. Those mentors of my childhood were right. Seeking truth and justice continues to lead me to diverse opportunities that were really always there in the first place. If I'm willing to pay attention and think about others, it's as though my blinders are removed and my awareness deepens. Whenever I have stepped out of my comfort zone and muddled along in my own imperfection, amazing things have happened. My world has expanded, my life is enriched, and I've learned something more about myself. I'm grateful for it. Meaningful progress may take the form of asking questions, or it may mean listening with full attention, or it may simply mean showing up and being present. Justice for each one of us is essential. So what am I going to do about it? The Bible has a very clear answer. I will attempt to be present and speak truth to power in love. Ephesians 4:15.
Good morning. My name is Greg Ondo. My office is over here behind the drum set. It is safe to say I did not really start having genuine discussions on race in America until the death of George Floyd. His death was felt around the country and sparked the beginning for me, like many Americans, to start having those real, honest discussions on race in our country. For me, to see a cop kneeling on a man's neck for 9 minutes seemed pretty evil. As I watched the rallies and listened to leaders speak on racial injustices, there were many common themes. One theme that focused me to look inward was the question, why does this keep happening? Which led to another question, why wasn't I upset over injustice before? There were plenty of examples that I've seen, Eric Garner, Freddie Gray, Trayvon Martin, Philando Castile, that did not make me want to read books on racial injustice. I remember having conversations with people about those cases, saying things like, they shouldn't have been doing what they were doing, or they should have just complied with the officer. How could so many people look at the same event and see it totally differently? I would come to realize that it is all about the lens in which you view the world that will shape how you feel about something. We all have different upbringings and experiences that lead us to form opinions about what's happening around us. Through our church book study of How to Be Anti-Racist by Ibram X. Kendi, I was able to look at things with a different lens, to read about how people of color have been systematically persecuted throughout history well after slavery was truly eye-opening for me. It was something never discussed in my education or upbringing. What was discussed in detail in my early education was music. Drums were first discovered in prehistoric Africa and Asia. Many drums would make their way to America through the slave trade. My drum teacher had pictures on his ceiling of all the great American jazz drummers. They would look down on us while we practiced. You could count the number of white drummers on one hand. I reflect back to that room and how I studied the music when I think about race. Realizing so many artists such as Elvis Presley, Bob Dylan, and the Rolling Stones were all influenced by early Black Americans was important in learning the proper history of music for me. The name Rolling Stones was actually inspired by a Black American blues legend, Muddy Waters. Ironically enough, he would only grace the cover of Rolling Stone magazine one time. The band, of course, with the namesake would be on it dozens of times. Elvis holds the title for King of Rock and Roll, and props to him for popularizing rhythm and blues. But artists such as Little Richard, Fats Domino, Chuck Berry, they've been doing it well before him. Elvis has acknowledged how much these artists and his attendance of a Black gospel church in Memphis influenced his style. Even the Beatles admitted to being influenced by many of these early Black American artists. In fact, if you listen closely enough, you can hear the rhythms and the melodies are quite the same. The Beatles just sped it up and made it a little bit louder. This education instilled in me the ability to see the broader picture, appreciate the melting pot of styles that can bring us joy each day. I would ask you this week to reflect on who your influences are and who were they influenced by. You may be surprised at the diversity of ideas that makes us as a human race so interconnected. My hope in sharing my story is that people look inward and ask themselves why they feel the way they do. It is important to be well educated on these difficult topics, to read books, have difficult conversations, seek different perspectives, and view the world through a different lens to form that broader picture. Lastly, the love that Jesus showed us was never grounded in judgment or situational analysis like, why couldn't that guy just comply? What Jesus taught was simply to love your neighbor. Thanks for listening.
Good morning. My name is Kathleen Scamarucha, for those who I do not know, and this topic touches very close to my heart, so I hope I can make it through this essay without crying. As a white Christian woman, I knew the power of expressing kindness. My parents embodied it. The faith community that surrounded me in my childhood and youth taught me to be the hands and feet of God. I was a nice white woman who always intended to help, not hurt, and provided what was needed to those who needed it more than I did. And I did not dig deeper until I did. And then I realized the current that often swept me into favorable circumstances swept others into circumstances fraught with obstacles to overcome. Obstacles that any person would find daunting and demoralizing, for no reason other than something as arbitrary as the color of their skin. And further study, conversation, and reflection made it clear to me that these obstacles are supported by systems that I never considered, much less questioned. And my privilege as a white person in this world became shockingly clear to me. And then I realized how much work I have to do in my own soul, with God, and within my community. Right now, I'm in a place of searching my soul to uncover the threads of racism that exist within me, to honestly look at them, to hold them to the light, and do my very best to deny them by working to strengthen the threads of anti-racism that also exist within me. I realize I can't do this alone. A community of faith committed to reckoning with this is the way forward toward understanding, toward humility.
If you would like to stand and join us to sing one last time. Falling down upon our knees, sharing now in common shame. We have fought security, not the cross that bears your name. Fences guard our hearts and homes, comfort sings a siren tune. We're a valley of dry bones, lead us back to life in you. Lord, we fall upon our knees. We have shown the weak and poor. Worship beauty, courted kings, and the things that go before. Pray for those we'd like to know. Favor sings a siren tune. We've become a talent show. Lead us back to life in you. this place, the God of heaven and earth comes with us. May we always know who it is that we can turn to in times of desperation. And may God, his life be the one that we follow outside of these doors, and may that life be what we dig deeper and find in others. Hope you have a great week, safe traveling, and we hope to see you back next Sunday.